Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome a French whiskey. I'm excited to learn about this brand. Joining us on behalf of Alfred GIRAUD is Zack Boiko. He is the national, are you the brand ambassador, the sales guy, or just everything for the brand in America, right?
All of it in between. You can call me the brand manager, brand ambassador. I do a little bit of everything.
Fantastic. So Zack here is going to be talking about this brand. We have all three of the existing expressions, as long as with some delicious French pastries to go along with these. Everyone should have a little notebook that you could have read through and take notes. But we are excited to welcome a new brand that I don't think anyone here has tried before. We're all about learning and getting nerdy. So don't forget, ask questions, toss them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. We have an intimate group today. So enjoy. All that said, welcome, lovely faces. Great to see you all again. And pass it over to Zack.
Perfect. Well, of course, thank you so much for having me and giving us the opportunity to connect with you all. It is a very unique, delicious, of course, whiskey, and it's French. And really, we are fairly new, and I'll get into all the details. But you know what I'm excited about is just to tell you the story about how it came about, and then really, what we do and what's at the center of why we created Alfred GIRAUD French malt whiskey. And I think the name itself is a great place to start in the pronunciation. I'm not French. I don't speak French. I speak whiskey. And starting with Alfred GIRAUD and the whiskey, I wasn't familiar with it. So Alfred GIRAUD, you almost want to leave the D off. It's silent. So pronouncing the name, it's Alfred GIRAUD French malt whiskey. But the point of the tasting tonight is really also to get your feedback, your thoughts. Answer any questions. So I prefer to keep it casual. I have a presentation that I'll use and throw up from time to time just to show you some slides, but really, again, just keeping it very casual. So I want to start out before we do our first pour and start sipping on Heritage. And by the way, if you already are, it's also fun. But the brand comes from, of course, the GIRAUD family. And let me see here. Let me share my screen. Make sure this goes up. All right. Do we see the GIRAUD family history slide? All right. So it comes from the GIRAUD family, of course, and their story is really one of cognac. Born and raised, all of them in Cognac region in France, starting with Louis GIRAUD. And Louis joined a very, very well-known and historic cognac producer, Remy Martin, back when Remy was, very young in a very small company. And he was a cooper before that. And then getting into Remy Martin, he then became a cellar master for Remy Martin for a handful of years, trained his son, Alfred, who then later became the next cellar master for Remy Martin. And of course, Alfred is who we named the brand after. And then trickling down and leading to his son, Andre GIRAUD, also became a cellar master for Remy Martin, creating these wonderful cognacs that Remy is known for over the years, and including, bottles of Louis XIII that are really on the shelves today, because, cognac at its heart is all about blending. In one bottle of cognac, you can have many, hundreds of different cognacs, even thousands going into that one bottle. So cognac is really all about blending and using different casks and finding a nice balance to create that final product. And that's what Louis, Alfred, and Andre did for their careers. Andre is still alive. He's the oldest or eldest surviving GIRAUD. And then his great-grandson or his grandson, Jean-Pierre, then became actually the commercial director Remy. So he left the production side and got into the commercial side, working for various brands for them. And then finally, but most importantly, in my opinion, Philippe GIRAUD. Philippe worked for Remy for a very, very short period of time, but then left that world of cognac, almost betrayed the family heritage and got into whiskey. And, you know, at the time, it wasn't a popular decision for him because the family, that's all that they knew. And that's what their heritage truly was. But Philippe decided to leave and started working for William Grant Sons, you know, Balvenie, Glenfiddich. And that's where he gained his knowledge, but really more than that, a passion for whiskey. So after working for William Grant for many years, Philippe decided to leave that world, and he became an entrepreneur. So since that was around the early 90s, he left, moved to Miami, and started a few different businesses, which he actually still has today, and all very successful, working in the luxury world. He actually operates and runs some Hermes Cartier boutiques in Latin America, Caribbean. He has a distribution company for some very high-end spirits, Laurent Perrier, Dalmore. So some very prominent and successful businesses, but always representing other brands and working and building other brands. So he looked at his family and he looked at sort of what he wanted to do. And he said, look, why don't we finally do something for ourselves? Let's finally produce something that we can really be proud of and stand behind the family name. And looking at their incredible history, knowledge, and resources in the world of cognac, and also in the region of cognac, with his love of whiskey, he combined both. And that's where the idea came for Alfred GIRAUD French malt whiskey. What they wanted to do was set out to create really the world's most premium French whiskey, and something that really, in their opinion, in their mind, stood for what French whiskey should be, and something quite different from what was being done at the time. And this was back, the idea came in around 2009, when there was only a handful of distilleries actually doing any French whiskey at all. About a dozen operating, from my understanding, back in 2009, 2010. That's when 2010, we started to distill the whiskey, started to age it. And then in 2019, the brand finally launched in France. But from 2010 to when there was only about a dozen distilleries operating and making whiskey, to today, there's over and upwards of 80, 85 distilleries doing French whiskey. So quite, in a short period of time, quite decent growth, especially considering that, the French is definitely not known for whiskey. But if we look at how whiskey, the category, has grown in the last, 15, 10 years, Japanese whiskey, and we have whiskeys from really all over the world that are highly decorated, and just super, super high quality whiskeys. So people are now a little bit more used to seeing these world whiskeys. And it really only makes sense that as we look forward, if you think about all the resources and the expertise that the French have, that France is going to be definitely a leading category in the world of whiskey as we look forward another 10, 15 years. And we're very excited to, of course, just be a part of that. And then hopefully, be on the cutting edge and the leading edge of French whiskey. So that's the family story. Stop sharing for a second. So with that, I'm going to start talking a little bit about the production and really what our whiskey is at its heart. So if we want, take heritage, pour it in your glass if it's not already in your glass. Let it breathe for a second, and we'll start talking about some of the processes here. And after we take a sip or two of heritage, the Madeleines that we sent are going to be a nice pairing with that. Any of these two little pastry treats can be served with any of the three whiskeys, but I think is going to go really well with heritage. And then we're going to finish off with Voyage in that little chocolate square. So getting back to the idea of Alfred GIRAUD French malt whiskey and what we wanted it to stand for. Philippe, the owner and the founder, talked to his family, said, look, we're going to do high-end, very premium, very meticulously crafted French whiskey. So in 2010, they started to distill their own whiskey. And the distillery that we partner with is Distillery St. Palais. I should just leave this up. Let me share. Give you some reference if you're not familiar with France. We have the Cognac region right above Bordeaux. And right here is where our distillery sits, Distillery St. Palais. So we partnered with them and we do our own single malt whiskey. So our whiskey is 100% French malted barley. Okay, so we get the barley from the east of France. I'll talk a little bit more about the barley, but we distill that whiskey. And then of course, our specificity in what we're known for is really the casks that we age the whiskey in. Over the years, the family has literally hand selected and collected these very, very old, rare cognac casks. So when the idea for creating a French whiskey came about, naturally the family wanted to age the French barley, the distillate, in these very old and rare cognac casks. And after many tests and trials, they really created our signature whiskeys, which are going to be the first two that we try, Heritage being the first one, by aging it in very, very old, rare cognac casks. So when we say rare and old, yes, it can mean many things, but really the tangible piece that we say when we say old is at a minimum, these are 30 years old, upwards of 50, 60, 70 plus years. So you're getting some of that essence from these old casks that comes back into the whiskey. So from day one, we're aging the majority of the whiskey in those cognac casks. However, for the first about 12 months, we do age the whiskey, some of the whiskey in new French oak. So in Limousin in France, the GIRAUD family actually has their own forestry operation in Limousin in France. So it's a nice part of the story. They're literally cutting down the trees and they're able to really work with the local cooperage and make their own casks from their own trees, from their own wood. And that new French oak we used because, the cognac casks are very old. There's not a lot of tannins in there. So we use the new oak, the new French oak, to bring back some of those tannins to give the whiskey a little bit of structure, a little bit of backbone. And then in addition to the new French oak, we use an even smaller proportion of new American oak, just lightly toasted. These aren't charred barrels, they're lightly toasted. And again, just to give it a little bit more depth of flavor. So a little bit more of those vanilla notes, classic with American oak. So the way that we really process and we distill our whiskey is much in the same as a cognac is produced. So again, we're going to talk a lot about cognac. However, we are 100% a French whiskey. But in producing cognac, in distilling cognac, there's a very specific, of course, still, and is very regulated. And there's a season that you can distill cognac. So outside of that season, if you're a cognac producer, those stills go quiet. Or in most cases, they then start producing gins or vodkas. So with our distiller that we partnered with, we take over those stills and we are making whiskey in that off season. So those stills, direct fire heated, the strong copper pot stills. And it's a double distillation. And then we also, something that is very unique to cognac, and it's done in all cognacs, but not really done in whiskey, is our reduction process. So the standard reduction process for whiskeys is reducing it to get it to bottling strength fairly quickly. And that time frame is, you know, maybe a couple months, but, you know, not gradually over time, to where we do it in the style of cognac, to where, you know, at least 2 years ahead, we start to slowly add water. So the water molecules bind with the whiskey molecules, and from, you know, our master blender, really getting everything to slowly get to the right bottling strength and really optimizing the flavor profile that we're looking for. So we're using a lot of those same cognac techniques in our whiskey, which is, again, all these little steps that we take really adds to the final product. So getting back to,
how does the blender decide what the bottling strength will be?
so Heritage is bottled at 45.9%. The way that the master blender came up with that was when we were building the brand and creating the whiskeys, there was many tests, many trials, and really just doing blind tastings, getting it to this level and then comparing it to, you know, 42, 48, 51. This is the one where he felt like it was most balanced, most sophisticated, and most refined. So here with Heritage, as I just mentioned, 45.9%. The majority of it is aged in these very, very old rare cognac casks with a little bit of new French oak, a little bit of new American oak, just for those first 6 to 12 months. And then after those, 6 to 12 months, everything goes back to finish maturation in the cognac casks. So we're looking here again at our distillery, where we make our own single malt. But also very, very important to discuss and to share is that drawing on those techniques of cognac, which is about blending many different spirits together to the final product, we also source other very, very high quality French single malts that are unaged. So we partner with 2 other distilleries and we purchase small amounts of their distillate, so just unaged whiskey, also 100% French malted barley. And we use that to really expand the palate and expand the flavor profile to create the final product that our master blender was looking for. So we call it a triple malt. It's a blended malt. It's not a single malt, but it's a collection of 3 single malts aged in those cognac casks, new American oak, and new French oak.
Are all 3 of these blended or just this first one?
Yes, the first 2, which I'm going to talk about, Heritage and Harmony, are really our core, collection, our flagship whiskeys. Those are triple malts, and Voyage will be the last one, is a double malt. So if everyone's had a chance to taste, what are you guys picking up?
I'm getting pear, vanilla, buttery light oak, a little bit of apple.
Yeah, definitely some of that pear. I pick up the buttery notes, almost like pastries.
It tastes as if it came out of a charred barrel. I'm getting a little like burnt tannins on the back end. And it does taste quite young, but like vibrant. It's got like a spice in the tongue.
Yeah, I think vibrance is a great. Here I get a lot of like almost candied fruits, some brightness. To me, it has a medium to long finish, which is a classic characteristic of a cognac. So It's really something that doesn't vanish right away. It sticks with you for a little bit. And you know, with the specificity of the casks that we use, really that dictates the amounts that we can produce every year. So Heritage that we're tasting right now, each year we're able to produce 23 casks, which is a drop in the bucket. It's 23 casks for us is around 10,000 bottles. It's when you compare that to like a Macallan, they're easily in the millions. I think Johnny Walker is 200 to 300 million bottles a year. So just to give you a point of reference, 10,000 bottles or 23 casks, very, very small production amounts, because again, the cognac casks that we're using are just very rare, hard to find. They're hand selected. And these will always be very small. We're not going to be able to scale these first two up. There's some other whiskeys that we have in the works, and we'll be able to come up with things that we can do a little bit more volume. But really, the control and the attention to detail that we put into a lot of the other processes, we want to keep things small. We are family owned, independently owned, and financed. So the family is able to really take their time. They're not in a rush just to get out there and be everywhere. It's not necessarily a passion project. Of course, they're going to make it into a business, but to create the brand that really they have their name on stands for a lot. So they're very particular about doing the right way, not rushing through things just to be profitable, in the first couple of years. So we've been able to slowly expand out of France. And just to give you an idea of where we're at, we started in France in 2019 and then made the trip overseas to the US and started in New York City right around the time of COVID, which was, of course, great timing, but it happens. And, since then, we are now in Florida, really focused on, Miami, West Palm, Orlando, and then we'll start in Texas, Canada, and then California. So I don't know if everyone on this call or in the tasting is in California, but we're technically not in California at all. We have a distributor's license that we can physically sell to anyone that wants to buy, but we don't have a sales team out there. So if we have an account that wants to order, they can go through our importer who has a distributor license, but we're not actively going out and opening different accounts. So you're not going to find it in any on-premise, any restaurants, any bars at this time. There's just a few retailers. Now that I'm skipping around, something else is very interesting about the brand is really the ingredients that we use. Of course, it's 100% French malted barley, but in the barley industry, it's quite common that you send your barley away for processing, and you think you're getting back the same barley that you are using. But oftentimes, because these are mass production facilities, there's no real traceability that what you're giving them to process comes back to you. So what the family did was invest in a micro malting facility that runs consecutively, 365, 24/7, where they're just micro batching the barley that we give them. So making sure that everything that we provide in, we're getting back, and really just, again, making sure that we have complete traceability from the farm that we get the barley from to bottle. So really putting a lot of attention to detail on making sure that we know everything that's going into every bottle and every cask that we have. So getting back now, unless any questions or any other comments on Heritage, what are your guys' initial thoughts? I know I don't know if everyone was on the Brand tasting, quite different. There's a lot of similarities maybe in the story, and if you just read the product, you know, on its face, it comes from the cognac region. Taste profile wise, it's definitely quite different. So what are your thoughts on Heritage so far?
I rather like this one. I get a little bit of the cognac on the flavor of it. It's got that nice buttery mouthfeel, very silky. The spice from the tannins from the new oak is really nice. It's just got a nice little bite, nice little kick to it. It's got a really nice, soft, long finish too.
Thank you. And then at any time, feel free to sort of get into your snacks as well. So we'll move on to our second whiskey here, Harmony. So at a basic, difference is really that Harmony is going to be slightly peated. So Heritage was unpeated, and Harmony is slightly peated. The goal, and I sort of in passing mentioned it, but the master blenders and the family's goal for the whiskey as far as how we wanted to portray the whiskey and how we wanted the taste profile to be is very balanced. And I know that I think that's probably a hot word that everybody uses, balance, but sophisticated, refined, meaning there's a wide range of flavors, but not any one flavor really stands out, punches you in the face. And a lot of times, at least for me, that's what you get when you drink a peated whiskey. Is it's, you know, very top note heavy with the peat, and it can be polarizing. People love it or hate it a lot of times. So with Harmony, it's very, very subtle on the nose. Sometimes it's hard to even pick up. But you get it on the palate, especially to me on the very, very end, on the finish.
What kind of peat is it?
So, very good question. In France, there's a ton of peat all over. However, it's illegal to use the peat, to harvest the peat and use it for commercial purposes. For different reasons, they said, of course, they want to protect the resources, the terroir, but we're unable to use French peat, even though it's anywhere to peat our barley. So it is one of the only things that we source from outside of France. So we purchase it from Islay. However, we bring it over to France and we peat the barley locally. For the aging and the recipe of it, if you will, again, 100% French malted barley, aged in the same proportion of casks. So those old cognac casks, a little bit of new French oak, a little bit of new American oak. This one is bottled slightly higher ABV. So where Heritage was 45.9, Harmony is 46.1%. So I definitely pick up, obviously you get that peat on there, but beyond that, I actually get a little bit of a different mouthfeel from Harmony, a little bit more oily, but some of the spices really stand out for me. Some sort of cinnamon notes, a little bit of nutmeg even. And then I get that consistent sort of similar finish as Heritage. What are you guys tasting?
I'd agree on the spices. I was trying to pinpoint which one it was because it's pretty subtle. It's just got that kick. So I was thinking ginger or But I like the idea of nutmeg too, because it's not super sweet, but it's got a little punch, but really nice, really nice.
Yeah, I like the ginger reference because I can feel that too. You almost get that tingling sensation a little bit.
It's almost more mace than nutmeg. And I just tossed it in the chat, but I took a bite of the Madeleine with this one, and it brought a really interesting saltiness to it. And like, that was not the flavor I thought was going to pull out of it. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, I just tried it. I got that immediately. Actually, that's funny.
Yeah, I'd say Jane was spot on. I got a hit of like pepper on the long finish, personally. Definitely a little bit of a pepper note, kind of lingering around, but for sure like a small bit of peat and otherwise a little bit of a fresh nose.
Nice.
And this one's mass produced, right? The whole 7 casks a year.
Yes, crazy. So this one is 7 casks, just around 2,000 bottles. So we use the same proportion of casks, but they're looking for a different style of the cognac casks. They're a little bit harder to get. So that in conjunction with the process for peating, that's why this one is produced on a smaller scale than Heritage.
How many casks are you getting per bottle? Are you using bigger casks?
No, they're 300 liters more or less. I mean, they're a standard size. Our casks generally around 400 bottles is what we're getting out of them.
Okay, so you have bigger casks. I guess those are compared to American barrels. Those are much bigger.
A little bit bigger, yeah.
I think ours are what, 220? Anna, correct me if I'm wrong. 220 American.
They're
liters?
around 200 liters, yeah, or 53 gallons. I was just gonna look up what the 300 is.
Yeah, so 400 bottles, you're looking at what, 300 liters?
Yeah, and it's not exact either. I mean, because we're not using one type of cognac cask from one cognac producer. They're all hand picked, so some are different sizes. But in general, 300 liters is, so I've asked this question as well, and that's the most standard size that they're using.
Makes sense. 79 gallon. I would guess probably 80. Or 79 is a very exact number.
Well, if it's 300 liters,
That's
79.
Fair enough.
But-
One of them is going to be exact, right?
Yeah.
Fair enough. The peat on this, I get a lot of the peat on the finish. It's not very peaty up front. It's just a hint in the middle. But the more I keep talking, the more that like peatiness is there. It's prominent. It's showing its head. It's nice. It's interesting.
And
That's
in
complexity.
Harmony specifically, if drop a drop or two of water in there, to me it definitely opens up the nose a little bit more than the others. So it's a nice way to go and compare and contrast.
Is this the only peated French whiskey?
The question was, is it the only peated French whiskey?
Yeah.
No, there's definitely some others out there that are very, very, very peated. So there's a range. Roselier is probably one of the more well-known ones, especially in France. They make an incredible whiskey. Varengame is another one, does a very, very good whiskey.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of French whiskey, so I was kind of surprised that there was a peated one, and now I have more to look for.
Yeah, they're out there. Like in the US, I think the main ones you're gonna see is Bren, of course. Bastille is out there. The Voix, I believe, is one I saw. Total Wine. You guys, California has Total Wines, right? Yeah. So there's a handful, but like I said, I think if you look forward 5, 10, 15 years, it's going to be a different game, and it's going to be a different stage in the world of whiskey. Cavalon is gotten a lot of acclaim, and they're a Taiwanese whiskey. You know, just again, I think the success of the Japanese whiskey and that boom has really catapulted a lot of other countries that maybe, you know, were more localized and not going outside of their home country with their whiskey is propelled that a little bit quicker. And for me, you know, I mean, I love Alfred GIRAUD, and this is what I do. This is it's sort of my life, but I love tasting all whiskeys from all over, and you know, just really learning about it. Like I'm not a whiskey expert. I'm definitely a whiskey enthusiast, and you know, I'm always open to learn about new styles and taste new flavor profiles.
So
I'm really glad to hear that, or taste that it's not, despite the fact that it's Isla barley, that it's done in a way that doesn't immediately click like, oh, that's Isla. You know what I mean? That would be the one thing I'm worried about, but it doesn't come across like that way at all.
But what I find always interesting or fun is like when I taste people on these whiskeys, or I tell them about them, I say, oh, this one's peated. I have a lot of people that, oh no, I hate smoky whiskeys. I don't like peated whiskeys. And then they try this one and it's like their conversions. Like, oh, okay, I didn't know that you could have a peated whiskey like this. It is very subtle. It's a lot of times it's a sort of that middle ground between those hyper peated whiskeys and, you know, what people at least perceive of them. And, you know, there's such a wide range in every style. So I'm happy to be able to offer something a little bit different than, you know, what people are maybe known to be drinking as a peated whiskey.
Could you even tell us what the ppm is on this? I'd imagine quite low.
Yes. Do you want to guess?
15?
It's lower. So it's from the master distiller and master blender said it's between 6 and 7. Yeah. So these two, again, Heritage and Harmony is really our signature flavor profile. This is what we will sort of always stand behind it, and really using those cognac casks in the proportion of a little bit of new French oak. This is what we started the brand with. And again, it's young. We started in 2019, so it's only been a few years, and in the States, it's really brand new. So we're just starting out, but this is the representation of the GIRAUD family and what they stand for as a French whiskey. We are talking about the bottle as well, and just a little fun fact before we move on to Voyage, the third whiskey. The bottle is actually fashioned after a 1900 cognac decanter that the family has had since I think it was like 1902 is when it was made. So they took that bottle as the inspiration and turned it into the bottle that you see today. So I look at it and sort of see, to me, I see the old fashioned glass at the bottom and then almost the whiskey decanter at top. But it's definitely something where it's, you know, over the short time we've been out in the market, it's become an icon for us, the shape and really just sort of being impactful, but at the same time, you know, very clean. So let's try Voyage.
So,
Voyage. Yeah.
if I could ask, it seems that you guys are adapting kind of, well, you're blending, right? So this is all a combination. And that seems to be, at least in my experience, what I've seen, that's very much a Japanese thing. Is that, I'm guessing that's a cognac thing as well, right? Blending multiple spirits. Whereas when you start to go towards Scotland or whatnot, single casks are a thing. Like people try to get micro, right? They go single malt, single distillery, single, like even in the US, you know, you got bottled and bond, it's going to be one distilling season, one distillery. So is there any push for that in France at all, or seeing, are you planning for that at all? Or are you still sticking to kind of the French roots and it's going to be more of a blending thing?
So like between the blending and sort of a standard release versus the single cast, single releases?
Yeah, like because you're creating your own single malt in-house, I would want to taste your single malt. I want to taste your spirit. I want to taste your single malt when you feel that it's ready to be released and it's matured. 3, 4, 5, whatever age you say it's ready to go at. Plus, and I'm guessing France has no legal requirements for the age of whiskey.
They do, and it's quickly becoming more regulated. It's more or less the same as Scotland. Not exactly the same, but 3 years, oak barrels. So a lot of it's very closely tied to those regulations. But France itself, because the category is growing and the industry is growing so fast in France, they have an international whiskey federation. And so they're putting more rules and regulations. And right now they're currently doing it by region. So every region can sort of have their own specificities. But to answer your question, yes, I think 100% we will come out with different releases. I'll finish the sort of conversation about what's next, and that's in that realm where it's not a single cask, but it's as close as you can get to a single cask. And we've had a lot of people reach out, especially because we do talk so much about these old cognac casks and the story behind those. In each cask, it's sort of gimmicky and markety, but each cask really does have its own story as far as where it comes from and what region and what chateau or wherever it's coming from. So there's definitely a push to come out with some single cask stuff. Right now, that's not our focus, but I think sooner than later we will, and not 100%, but more than likely eventually we will come out with our single malt as well. So last but not least, we have Voyage. So Heritage and Harmony, again, they were created to really stand for the brand and what the Giraud family wants to be known for. After creating these, our master blender and cellar master wanted to put something together that deviates from our core range. And honestly, the goal was to create something that has never been done before in the world of whiskey, something truly unique. And there was a lot of testing that went into it. And what the first iteration was taking 2 separate casks. So again, it's a double malt. So starting with the whiskey itself, we use our own single malt, and then we source one other distillate, unaged French single malt. So we use 2, and then we age them for the first stage in 2 different types of casks. Sauterne, which is a sweet French wine, so a wine cask, which is used, it's used in whiskey and aging spirits. So I'm sure you guys have seen some whiskeys aged in Sauterne casks. And then we used another type of wood, which is very rarely used in the world of spirits and whiskey, just because it's very, very difficult to age whiskey, and it can take the whiskey bitter very quickly. So, and that wood is called French Robinia. It's almost similar to an acacia wood. I'd never heard of it before, but it provides the whiskey with some unique baking spice notes, oily mouthfeel. And when paired with the sweetness from the Sauterne, you get a very nice balance and brings out some sweeter notes. And then to give Voyage sort of our classic touch and to round it out a bit, we finished it in those cognac casks. So where Heritage and Harmony are almost 90%, 90-95% aged in those old cognac casks, Voyage is predominantly aged in the Sauterne cask and the French Robinia. And just for the last, there's no specific time frame, but anywhere from 6 to 12 months, it's aged in and finished in the cognac cask. So here we produce 5 casks per year, and for the annual release, the inaugural release of the 5 casks, we just did 1 for the US. So each cask is 405 bottles. So we released earlier this year. It's an inaugural release to the US. So in addition to the bottle that you see, the US release has, they're individually numbered 1 of 405. And every year we'll continue to do 1 cask for the US. And then the other 4 go to France and then the other global markets. So here, Voyage is bottled at 48%, so you're right at 96 proof. And to me, on the nose, you can see it sort of in the whiskey maker nose, but I definitely get the honey and the grape notes and almost some spices. I pick up those same notes on the palate as well.
I want to try to catch everyone while they still have something in their glass, but we do have a tradition here. So if everyone could jump onto their cameras for just a second. Considering there's only 3 expressions to be had, we got to the photo part of our journey a little faster than normal, but jump onto your cameras, join us to raise a glass. Zach, thank you very much for joining us to this brand. May you have success here in the US. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone else for joining us tonight. And raise a glass and smile towards the camera. Cheers. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Oh, thanks for having me, for sure. So yeah, here on Voyage, I love this one, and for me, this is like my after dinner drink. Pairs well with most desserts. I get a lot of sweeter notes, especially compared to Heritage and Harmony. A bit more of a mouthfeel on this one, but definitely it's unique. There's something on the nose that's almost a little like pickup notes of rancio, something a little bit almost earthy about it.
This was my favorite one of them all so far. It's really tasty, and it is unique. There's some interesting notes that jump out. It's not just floral. It's not just fruity. There's something there that I'm trying to pick out. It just keeps you coming back for more. For everyone who's trying to search Total Wine and local shops, Zach and I discussed them because it's not distributed out here. Zack has a link, or how do we do this if for anyone that wants these?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So in California, we're not really regularly available. There's a few retailers that I know and I work with for this call. So we're able to give just you guys on this call special pricing for each expression, free shipping and everything. So if you're interested, and I'll give you the prices here in a second, but if you're interested, I don't know how the best way to coordinate. You can email me directly, name, I need like name, phone number, email address, shipping address, and then of course, what you would like. Perfect, through the prices up there. So 145 for Heritage, Voyage 165, and Harmony 185, which is not something you're going to see many places, but feel free to send me an email, and then I'm going to send all of that to the retailer, and they will coordinate and ship it directly to you. And really, I think the billing will go direct. And so Voyage, as I mentioned, 1 cask for the US, 405 bottles. There's only a few cases left in the US. So I don't have an exact number on that, but once this first run runs out, that'll be out until next year's release. So we have a little bit of time, but there's not too much left because this one has become, people love the collector's editions, and this is definitely, especially since it's the inaugural release, it's been pretty popular. So we have Heritage, Harmony, and Voyage. So what's the, let's go around for most of you. What are the favorites of the three? Ah, beautiful. Right on cue.
Hey, Tony, if you email Zach, he'll be able, actually, Tony's in Florida. If you have any advice for Florida, you're in Florida too, right?
Yeah, I'm in Miami. So Tony, yes, it's available in Florida. Again, just select independent retailers. Where are you located, Tony? Pensacola? Yeah, I mean, it's definitely available. I'd have to check and see which retailers. And then also you can, if anything, just shoot me an email and I will, I'll get you set up. But also, so this pricing is, every retailer is at their own sort of, they control their own pricing, but this pricing is not really available at most retailers at all. So it's probably better because this includes free shipping. We can go through and send you the bottles for this pricing. But just shoot me an email and we'll coordinate.
Can you talk a little bit about the pricing? I know it's a touchy subject, but right, I mean, these are definitely luxury whiskeys. So can you just talk about, why is, I understand, it's a limited run, but like 165 a bottle is not chump change, right? So
No, they're 100%. And it's not a touchy subject. It's a reality. They cost some money for sure. The pricing was something that, we definitely went back and forth on, depending on like sort of where we wanted to land. And it's a cost of goods thing. The cost of the cask, the cost of the process, really dictates what the pricing can be. Of course, we have, we can decide on how much we're making, but to be honest, it's not much, and it's far less than the mass market brands. So it's really just dictated that, look, we're not making a lot, we're putting a lot, there's a lot of investments and a lot of future investments that are going into it, but for the quality of the casks and the ingredients and everything that put into it really dictates what the price is going to be. And we feel that taste 100% is subjective. So you can meet anyone on the street that says this is amazing or this is garbage, so it's subjective. We're not here to tell you what's the best whiskey in the world and that ours is better than anyone else's. But we feel that, we're charging a fair price for what it takes to put in and produce the bottles. And the fact that they're only X amount is really also something to where beyond the taste, and that's what you're paying for, is the whiskey itself. It is about the experience, and it's about being able to have something unique and not always available, on your, retail store shelves, and something it's a little bit different. So those sort of factors led to the price.
thank you. That's fair. I think just about everyone has voted. We got one outstanding,
Okay.
but I'm going to close down the poll. What do you think was the favorite for the group? I'll let you take a guess.
I mean, I'm guessing Voyage was the favorite.
It's pretty much by a landslide. We got 64% voted for Voyage, 21% voted for Heritage, and 14% voted for Harmony. I'm surprised you
I
didn't call
voted
it
for
Heritage.
Harmony.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You call Voyage Voyage and not Voyage. I'm surprised you call Heritage Heritage but not Heritage.
I know. Yeah. It's there's no reason for it. It's just how I got into saying it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
If you're gonna French it up all the way.
I should be consistent. You're right. Yeah.
We should have sent everyone freedom fries to go with this, right?
Yes. Yeah, that would have been well received, I'm sure.
But I think salty French fries would actually gone really well with Harmony.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm really big on food pairings, and Alfred GIRAUD, we're in a lot of high-end restaurants and bars, and we've done some really interesting whiskey dinners and whiskey pairings, and we've actually created almost like a risotto dish, but made with the barley that we use, and paired that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, those are the sorts of some of the experiences that we're bringing to the markets as we come, because it really does, it's not a standard whiskey, at least in our mind. We want to do things a little bit differently and try to, it's niche by definition, meaning that it's just very little produced, and French whiskey is not a well-known category, especially in the US. So really, as we expand and as we're soon in California and some other key states, that's what we want to do. And I think for the group and for everyone that I meet, I'm always really just open to the questions and what you guys would like to see and what's interesting to you, because at the end of the day, that's the most important feedback that we can receive.
Definitely.
So to give you a little bit of what's ahead, we're going to release later this year in the US, and it just released really last month or this month in France, Intrigue. No, here we go. I'm still sharing now.
You're not sharing, no.
Well, that would be why. So let me share here.
Ooh, pretty.
Beautiful bottle. This will be, what you were mentioning about single cask release, this is 2 casks. We use different casks for this. Of course, the cognac cask, Sauvignon Blanc cask, and what makes it Intrigue is the master blender had an 80-year-old wine cask that he fell in love with and aged the whiskey, and just again fell in love with the flavor profile that it brought and used that to create Intrigue. But he is not releasing what wine cask and what maker it's from fear of being replicated. So the owner even tells me that he doesn't know what it is. I don't know if I believe that or not. However, that's where the name came from, was having that 5th cask that we're not releasing what the actual cask is. But it's something. We did 2 casks, so we had 810 bottles. 150 we'll bring to the US, and we will offer to our allocation list. So for the group, if anyone's interested, we're happy to, of course, offer to get on the list. What happens with the allocation list is, like many others, there's no priority. There's going to be an offer that's sent out, and it's first come, first serve. And then once it's out, it's out. But this is, again, it'll be a premium product. So you're looking at, I think, a retail around $470. But just something very unique. I have tasted samples once. It is delicious. It's very good. Bottled at a little bit higher ABV. You're at 51.7. So something unique, even beyond the 3 that we did try.
Quite interesting. Yeah, personally, what I was saying was I'm more interested in seeing. So you said you source unaged single malt from 2 other distilleries in France. I would be more so than a single cask, because single casks are hit and miss, and it is what it is. I would be more interested in trying just your spirit, having
Right.
your
So
spirit
the single
unblended
malt.
with it. Yeah, single malt. Yeah, a single malt
Yeah.
expression from Alfred GIRAUD to really see, if I love it, if that's the spirit that I love, or if there is if there is an edge, if you know what I mean, just to kind of, we've tried the marriage, and I want to try the components of it as well. I think that would be really fun.
I think give it another year to 2 years and you'll be able to do that.
Fantastic. Yeah, you got. I mean, you guys are just kicking off, so that's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing for certain, and we've made no statements, but I mean, there's definitely plans, and we're not going to put out anything unless we feel it's ready. So that's really the only reason, but we're definitely looking at it, and we know that, you know, single malts, justified or not, there's, you know, a lot of people really have, you know, strong feelings and want to try, you know, the single malts on their own. So it's good for us that we've established sort of our blending techniques and really the expertise of what we want to be known for, and then coming out with a single malt. So it's a fun way to sort of compare, you know, the two different styles. So I think in about a year to 2 years, we'll be able to launch one of our first.
And with France being the world's #1 consumer of Scotch, how is this being received in France? Do the French love French whiskey, or is it more of an export market?
That's a good question. So it's a little bit, I mean, it's definitely more of an export market in just sheer volume, because France is you know, fairly small, but the majority, if you remember, I said there's around 85 plus distilleries now in France. The majority of those 85 only produce and sell in France. So that shows that the French locals are sustaining their own category. So France is a market, the consumption is growing for French whiskey, and that is taking away, of course, from Scotch whiskey, but Scotch whiskey is by far the dominant, you know, it's the leader. So the French are also very proud people. So they support their own products, and they definitely have bought in wholeheartedly to the category and really supporting French whiskey. For Alfred GIRAUD, we are 100%, we're on the top end, we're at the premium side. So when you look at our price point, we're the leading premium French whiskey in France. And I think if you look at, like, we're in Whiskey Shop Paris and a lot of the big retailers, we've actually outperformed some of the killers that we have here, like the Macallans and stuff, in that price range. Not, you know, Macallan, like the entry level price points, but we're performing very well. And as far as the French premium categories concerned, we are really standing out as the leader, which is, you know, a good sign and a good show of things to come. And sort of on that note, being, you know, other countries that are very, you know, they're Francophiles and very French focused, Asia. So we recently launched in South Korea and Vietnam. And in the first few months, we've been there for 3-4 months. They've outperformed all other markets for us, above France. So I think they're, you know, very focused on, you know, the cognac traditions, and then the French, France is very known for its luxury and its technique and its skill in the product that it's putting very high quality. And we're sort of seeing that translate into some of those Asia demographics that's, you know, have really supported, like the cognacs and the Remy's and the Hennessy's and those products in those areas.
Makes sense.
I don't know if we talked about this at all. Maybe you said it and I missed it, but the 3 that we tried I know there's not an age statement, but is there a general age for those?
You're right. We didn't talk about it. Good question. So of course, like you said, there's no age statement. The whiskey is right around 10 years old in those same age across all 3. And I think as we look ahead, Heritage, Harmony, Voyage will always remain unaged, meaning no age statement. But the single malt, when and if we get into the category, and we most likely will, those will start to carry those age statements.
That makes sense. I really enjoy the fact that you're focused on local terroir and French malt, and that really is what sets you guys apart, which I really like. What was I gonna ask? What's the plan moving forward? Because the thing you talk about is 80-year-old cognac casks, right? But you can only use them X amount of times until they're at that point a neutral vessel. So
Oh, yeah, and we don't use ours more than twice.
wow. So where are you getting 80-year-old cognac casks for future releases? Like they
They're
can't
not
be
all
that many.
80, they're upwards of 80, and you know, it's different, but the casks that we have used have been collected over years. And now that we started to sort of really launch and expand the business, of course, we upped the purchasing of those casks, but it's not a deal with any one cognac house. It's one or two casks here, a couple casks here that we build up, and again, it'll always dictate how much we can produce. So if in 5 years that supply runs out, then that's what it is. We won't be able to continue to produce Heritage and Harmony. We've planned it out, so it's really not going to be the case. We like 23 casks is not much for Heritage, 7 casks is not much for Harmony. So we're pretty confident that's not going to be an issue. But if it were, something crazy happens, then yes, we will have to stop.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions or any?
I'm just jumping around and
Answer or
revisiting
no?
stuff.
Sorry?
I'm just jumping around and revisiting because they're all so different. They're similar, but they're different. They're so different. Tony was asking if you can put up the info for Heritage again.
Mhm.
Because he missed it. Heritage.
Yes.
Yes, please dig into your sweets. If you forgot to eat your cookies, doctor says eat your cookies.
It was, we don't do a lot of, especially virtual tastings. So we wanted to give you guys something else. And it was actually very difficult finding shelf stable little French pastries that actually paired well because, there's a lot of French stuff, but I wanted to make sure it was a good match. So it wasn't easy finding these. And even though the chocolate did melt a little bit, I think it still works.
Yeah, for sure. Zack and I were talking about it. We wanted to do a pairing, and like macaroons need to be refrigerated, and I was shipping this stuff. So I didn't want anybody to die. That would have been bad.
Most importantly.
So what you're saying is you had to try out a number of different things just for QA, right?
Good
The
job.
sacrifices we make for you is
Mhm.
just every week I'm doing something.
Yeah, it's not easy.
And if Zach's like, you got to fly to France and sample casks, the sacrifices I make for you, Anna, I do this for the group. Tony, you should have received chocolate. Did you not receive chocolate? Check your box. Check the box. There should have been a Madeleine and some and a cook. Well, the chocolate's in. Oh, excuse me, my cat thing. I got muted on my own computer. Rude.
I bombed by the cat.
That's right. There should have been the chocolate is inside the cookie. It's a cookie with chocolate in it.
Hold on, let me see.
It's a dark chocolate and a pinch of sea salt. Buttery French shortbread. I don't know why I have an English accent. All right. Did you get a screenshot of this?
I can send them individual, I can send all this information and let me know what you need. So this is Heritage Harmony. It's coming up.
It's not moving. Or at least on my end.
Right, there we go.
There you go.
And
Is there any correlation between the colors, or are they just picking colors?
There's no correlation. I created a correlation after the fact when describing the differences. So Heritage and Harmony are both H's, so it can get confusing when you're first learning about them. So Harmony being gray smoke, that's how I associated it. But there's no real reason that the gray was chosen. I mean, the names itself, yes, there was reasons, but the colors was just part of the aesthetic and the design.
Tell us about the names.
So Heritage is really the first whiskey that was created. And again, the reason for creating Alfred GIRAUD French small whiskey was to celebrate the family and their heritage and the expertise and their lives in the world of cognac. And then the founder, of course, leaving that to go to the world of whiskey. So the marriage of cognac and whiskey and family's resources in France. That's why they wanted to put out Heritage, to really celebrate the family's heritage. Harmony being really the ethos of the brand, and again, using the blending techniques and creating the balance and creating something that was harmonized, if you will, adding that heat to the whiskey to hopefully create something that was very well balanced and harmonized across the palate. So that's the reason for Harmony. And I get a lot of, almost every group I talk to is like, oh, Hibiki has Harmony, isn't that protected? But no, you can't. It's spelled different, but it's not the same. You can't, I guess, trademark that name. So different from Hibiki Harmony. And then Voyage, deviating from our signature flavor profiles of Heritage and Harmony, and creating something that had never been done before. And I sort of noted it that we use Sauterne cask, French Robigna, and Cognac. Those three casks used in combination for one whiskey has never been done before. So it is truly a one of it kind whiskey. But that's the essence of Voyage, was doing something new and breaking away from our core range.
Yeah, Matt asked a question in the chat. Will the Voyage stay the same, or are you planning to innovate every time? Is it going to be different with future releases?
Voyage will stay the same year after year. We will more likely create different expressions, of course, in that what we're calling the exploratory range. So just different types of casks, different styles, different techniques. Anything that lives in this range, the rules are, it truly has to be different in some aspects. So that's those are the guardrails on that. But it's not going to be like a batch 1, batch 2, batch 3. Every year will just be a new release of 5 casks. The only difference for this first release was that for the US, in the first release in every country, since it's the inaugural release, we created an inaugural label that has them individually numbered.
So what grains are predominant in France? Is barley the predominant grain that is grown in France?
Yes, it's actually, France is the number 2, number 3, it goes back and forth, barley producer in the world.
Oh, wow. Did not know
Russia
that.
being number 1, Germany is either number 2 or number 3 between France. It goes, they're very close. But barley is, up there. Not that it's a grain, but grape, of course, is up there as well.
Very cool.
Outside of that, I honestly don't know.
This was fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Zach. We really appreciate it. I'm gonna exit the sharing now. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to unmute and ask. But if there are no questions, we're gonna hit stop on the recording and just hang out, drink and chat and ask questions off the record. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you so much to Zach for being here to host this. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I really enjoyed learning about a new French brand that I knew nothing about before. Thank you for introducing us to this. So cheers to you.
Cheers. No, and thank you. It's my pleasure, and I'm happy to do this whenever you guys are ready for a refresher or another dram, and try some of the new ones that come out. So it's great meeting everybody virtually.
For sure. Yeah. When you have a few more releases, we'll do a follow-up, see how you guys are progressing. Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.